Hey, welcome back to Spiritual Modalities for a Spiritual Life. Jeannie Lynch, and as promised, I was going to find as many practitioners as I could around the globe to give you a taste and a touch of all different types of modalities. And today is no different. Janet Savage, my beautiful friend, has a company. It's called Handtails. Wondering what that is? She does the ancient art of palmistry, but she does it with a beautiful modern twist. Wondering what that is? You're going to have to stay watching. I'll be breaking it down today as part of this series. Stay watching. So excited to share Janet Savage with you and her company Handtails. I'm going to put up a couple slides of the fingerprints and my handprints that we did when we did the work together years ago. And I learned some pretty cool things about myself, and I'm going to share some of those now. I learned I have a murderous thumb. Wondering what that is? I also learned that I have fear to fail, which is rotten tomato syndrome. As you know, I did a whole video on that. I learned that, I have anger issues, but more importantly, what to do with those anger issues when they arise within me. And then I also learned I was from the School of Peace. So that's just some of the things that Janet helped me uncover about myself. And I'm excited to share her modality with you today and ask some deeper questions about how she does this work. So I'm going to read you a beautiful bio. Let me bring up a beautiful picture of my friend Janet. We'll get to know her a little bit more. Stay watching. That interview is up next. Janet Savage became certified as a hand analyst in 2000 by the International Institute of Hand Analysis. Janet is now one out of 12 practicing master analysts and one of 6 master teachers. She consults with her coaches and individuals and groups worldwide, and she trains others to use this system. This system combines this ancient art of palmistry and the contemporary science of fingerprint analysis, aka the modern palmistry with a scientific base. Her focus is truly on your life purpose, your personality style, and strength, rather than trying to predict the future. Without further ado, let me bring on beautiful Janet Savage. Welcome, Janet. Janet, thank you so much for doing Spiritual Modalities for a Spiritual Life. And as you know, we are interested in this workshop and this series of talking and touching and tasting as many modalities as we can with people all over the globe. And this hand analysis, fingerprints, is just another beautiful modality that helps people uncover who they are and be the best expression of themselves. So I've already kind of introduced you before this video, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about how you got into the modality of hand analysis.
Yes, and Jeannie, thanks so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be reconnected with you. So good stuff. So a little bit about the modality yes, palmistry. You think about palmistry and you think about hands. And so it does have an aspect of palmistry, but it also has an aspect of fingerprints. So I talk about hands as having 2 languages. One is the language of your soul, which is your fingerprints. The fingerprint patterns you probably all know out there never change. They're unique to you. And that is your soul language. But your hands are your personality language, and they do or do not communicate with each other. And my job is to help you communicate better using the language. In other words, your soul is yearning to speak with you, and you are born clueless. And so it's about unfolding, and it's about experiencing, and it's about understanding. So basically, this is the best of the non-predictive modalities of palmistry. Ancient palmistry goes back forever, okay? Well, I am a scientist, I guess, a public health scientist. I came from public health. I have a master's degree in public health. I was working in academia and in public health for 30 years. And you get to a point in your life where you say, enough. I want something more. I want something that gives me passion, gives me my unique expression. I had great jobs, but I never felt that I seized them. It wasn't my passion per se. And so a friend of mine said, I want out. I want out. This is when I was at UC Berkeley in California. And a friend of mine said, you should get your hands analyzed, Janet. And if you look at my hands, I know you guys don't know about hand shape necessarily, but I have the hands of a scientist. So I was a little bit skeptical.
Okay.
But I trusted her, and I said, okay, I'll go up there. This was the International Institute of Hand Analysis. And it was life-changing.
So that's a good question. I think most people who get into different modalities kind of go through their own, awakening or experience, and they're looking. And were you at that kind of pivotal time in your life?
Yeah. And I say to people, right time, right tool. It just shows up. And I happen to be a very concrete person, the scientist, right? And so I love the absolute concrete personal nature of your hands, but I also recognized what I was here to do was to develop my intuitive skills, to join the two together. So I went up there, and as I said, it was really life affirming. It helped me access really what I knew deep down inside, but I wasn't giving myself permission. And it launched me, and I've been doing this now for 20 years.
So the training that you had, was it with the gentleman who, it's his training? Is it his program that kind of takes the ancient art but turns it into more, the forensic science, fingerprint? Can you take us to the backdrop of the story of how it came to be the modality that it is today?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this negative in any way, but I think when you hear palmistry, you think of the little gypsy with the crystal ball and, coming, and that's not this at all.
Right.
So take us through what it is today.
Well, Richard Unger is the man who you're referring to, and in the 1970s, late 70s, he was kind of a mainstream kind of guy like me. I didn't know anybody who was in this kind of world when I was in academia and public health. But he said, you know what, palmistry is fascinating. And he started to study the thousands of years of ancient, the Western, what came to the West anyway, and read books. And he looked at the non-predictive, I will repeat that, non-predictive version.
Stop for a second and explain that. I mean, I know nothing I do intuitive is ever predictive. So people say to me, what's my future look like? I go, well, I have to kick free will out of the way in order to tell you that, and that's never going to happen. So when you say non-predictive, that's the statement you're making. It's the design in your hands, it's your soul print, your soul purpose, your school, as you say, and you're not going to tell somebody, I see your lifeline's short and you're going to die. I mean, it's not that kind of stuff. Okay, that's what you mean.
Right, exactly. Okay. So that's non-predictive in that we do talk about possibilities and potential. So, as you said, free will, we get to start with that blueprint, start with that potential, and then work with ourselves and hopefully other people to design the life that we want. And that's really what this is. So going back to his study of hands, palmistry, is palmistry, that's personality expression.
Got it.
That's our behaviors. That's our motivations. That's how we prefer to relate and be related to our heartline. It's how firmly grounded we are. What kind of talents, what kind of gift markings do you have in your hands? How do you hold your thumb? So that's all personality.
Okay.
But what I feel is the signature of this system is our fingerprints, because our fingerprints are unique to us. They never change. Your hands can change.
Yeah. So in the ancient aspect of it, did they ever look at fingerprints, or is the fingerprints the new technology?
Not that we know of,
Okay.
but some Western palmists in the early 1900s began to look at fingerprints, but they didn't get very far. But Richard, in his intensity, said, but what about fingerprints? So he studied in the medical libraries and the forensic libraries. He came up with some theories about what fingerprints mean. He began to apply that theory.
So he got the data, basically? He just...
thousands of hands. He looked at thousands of fingerprints, and he decoded what we feel is now the modern science of fingerprint analysis. And the best traditions of, in our estimation, of ancient palmistry and how they work together.
Well, that's a good lead in to pull up and put some prints up on the screen now. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about when someone's working with you, what are some things that your hands can tell you? We can get into the fingerprints together or as you wish.
Yeah. Well, I want to look at, in other words, I don't start, because each person is different. We're all unique. So I don't always start at the same point.
Okay.
I do get to the fingerprint story, and I do get to the main theme in the hands. That's the personality story. The other is the soul story. But I may just grab something from the hand and then go into the fingerprints, or I may start with the fingerprints. But basically, what I'm looking at is where is the dynamic tension, or even better, delicious dilemmas
I love that. I just
in our
love that.
hands. So a delicious dilemma basically means, you've got this potential, you've got this soul yearning that wants expression through your personality, but there may be things that are getting in the way. There may be things that are just completely opposites. So I want to look at that dynamic tension so we can help break the inertia. So you want me to give you an example?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's say one of the aspects of your fingerprints is your life school. There are 4 life schools. It's your major here at Earth University, or maybe your foundational piece for the dance of your life purpose and life lesson, which also shows up in your fingerprints. So let's say this person is in the School of Love, which is about emotional mastery, emotional authenticity, the journey of the heart. And I look into their hands, and they have all sorts of intimacy markers, challenges about intimacy, or maybe on their heart line, because that's where I want to go. If I'm looking for the School of Love, at the School of Love, they might have dangling angers, or glitches, or braiding, or power giveaway lines. And so I said, look, this person has had a journey through the heart. They're learning lessons about the heart. And that's a starting point to say your real journey is to take that part of your story and to break through into trust and surrender and openness and vulnerability. So that would be an example of a delicious dilemma, breaking the inertia.
Well, that's a good segue to pull up maybe my hands and go back a good 10 years and tell you kind of, when I met you, I was already on the spiritual journey. I was already working with people. I was helping up everybody tap into their own stuff like you were helping people, but I was looking for someone to tell me. So when I met you, I learned a little bit about my anger. I learned how to use that to my advantage instead of seeing it as a negative thing. I learned I have a murderous thumb, which we can talk about. What would you tell me about my session with you?
Well, if for those of you looking at the image there of your hands from 10 years ago, so they may have changed, the hands themselves, not the fingerprints, but the hands might have changed. That we have a fingerprint pattern. You can see my little hieroglyphics there in the lower right-hand corner of the left hand. But most importantly, that's the fingerprints. But most importantly, I've described in simple terms what the fingerprints say. Life school, remember I mentioned School of Love? Well, Jeannie's in the School of Peace. And her life purpose is to be in the spotlight as a courageous healer. Her life challenge has something to do with power in relationship to worth in the world, basically. But we won't get into that. I wanted to talk about a couple things in the hands, your hands. Yeah. The murderer's thumb we can get to because it's fun. Yeah. School of Peace is about learning about being completely embodied, completely present. So like I said, the heart line with the School of Love, I want to go to your root chakra, which is your life line. And that's the line that goes around a person's thumb. Not all go around, but basically go that way. And yours are pretty long and solid, but there's a lot of glitches on them, which means that you've had a life potentially of challenge, a life where you can be ungrounded. School of Peace can be ungrounded, can be out of body, can be, completely not able to be in the present for whatever reason. And so we would work with grounding you in your body. Body is temple, present moment. We'd be there. Okay, so that would be your life school in relationship to your root chakra.
Okay.
So the other thing would be, we joked about tomato fear. I think it's even on the screen. I wrote out tomato fear. And your life purpose is to be in the spotlight as this courageous healer. One of your gifts is the gift of courage. Another gift is the gift of the healer. So I want to put your gift markers in relationship to your soul purpose. And your soul purpose is to be the artist, the individualist, to be in the spotlight, to be seen, to appreciated and acknowledged, to be out there with your courageous healing path.
Got it.
Okay,
wow.
So when tomato fear shows up, it's basically, and usually it's some sort of whiteout.
Yeah, I saw that on my page.
Underneath, that's underneath the ring fingers. That's your path of the individualist and the artist. And when that shows up, it just means there's fear of potential rejection, of having rotten tomatoes thrown at you, of not, trying to be so good at what you do. And then there's a fear, oh, wait, people won't like it, or they won't like me, or whatever it is. But I think that's a delicious dilemma, right?
Yeah. I mean, in power, it's perfect, right? Because you could be a perfectionist and drive yourself crazy, or you could output hopefully good content. In my case, my YouTube channel, it'll take me 20 clips to do a 2-minute video.
Right.
I can beat myself up sometimes, but to your point, if it's in balance, if it's in check, it's symbiotic, I guess.
Right. And you add your school of peace. If you're present, embodied, and breathing, then it will just flow. And then you can overcome that. Rotten tomatoes. No, You're stepping up into your spotlight, and you will attract and do attract the people who want that beauty, creativity, individuality.
I love what you were saying earlier, too, about being in your body. And when I went through my delicious dilemma in my life, I was literally traveling, having spontaneous out-of-body experiences because I didn't want to be in my body because it was too painful. So learning that, but more importantly, learning that for myself, but helping others, because I deal with grief quite a bit in my spiritual practice, helping people get in their body and really navigate through that. So it's interesting that it showed up in my hands. I love that.
Exactly. Yes.
So, well, let's do the fun thing with the murderous thumb, because I think you said the chakras are in my thumb, or explain that, and then we'll move on.
Showing the thumb again, it's your right thumb that is really like the bulbous part of that right thumb.
Janet, I have to tell you, I hid my thumb my whole entire life, if you can see this, okay? One thumb's a little stumpy and dumber than the other, I used to say, and I was embarrassed by it.
Well, we're going to talk about the good news.
Okay.
So, like the root chakra, which is the lifeline, your chakras, there are chakras, 7 chakras that show up in your hands. Your murderer's thumb, and the other one too, is your crown chakra.
Okay.
And then the middle section of your thumb is the third eye. And then the lower section of your thumb is your throat chakra.
Got it.
And they can be balanced or they can't be balanced. But when you have an extra large crown chakra,
got it.
The old palmists used to call it the murderer's thumb if it was squeezing out the third eye, because that's discernment. So you might have tons of willpower and no discernment. So you're just going to be like a bull in a china shop and maybe murder somebody, right? That's why they used to call it the murderer's thumb. So that's sort of the funny aspect.
Okay.
But the good aspect is because your third eye isn't compromised with that large upper section, the crown chakra. Basically what that's saying is, when you're on purpose, when you're in that mode of I'm living on purpose, I'm living my passions, then you just got extra willpower to align with that.
I love that. Look out world, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny. Hey, let's get into, we'll take my hands down now, and we'll kind of get into a success story. Obviously, I'm sharing my success with you. I thought it was a very successful session, but do you have other stories that you'd like to share so we can spread the joy?
So many. Well, and I work with people from all over the world, and we talked about the idea of of a single session, and sometimes a single session is a perfect launching pad for them. Other times is working with people over time. So I'll give you two short examples. One, a man I'm working with now who was in prison for 16 years, and that's not what he came. It wasn't until like the fifth session that he told me that, so I really didn't know. But he's a successful entrepreneur, and that he's bringing this brand new modality about fighting fires. Heaven knows we knew this, like a drone technology that he is trying to bring to the world. And his life school is the school of love. And here's the delicious dilemma, because he's passionate. School of Love is about passion about what he does, but his hands are the hands of invulnerability. And I won't even go into the details, but he's had a hard life. I looked at those hands and I said, I know this man has had a really, really hard life. So shutting down his emotional communication to the results that he wants. But he's been in a committed relationship for 9 years now, but there's a lot of tension. So I worked with him over time about working on communication where you actually are connecting, not blaming, not attacking, not directing, but you are showing compassion, understanding, and reflecting back. So we've been working over time a lot about role playing, reframing. I'm doing inquiry method with him, where I don't, like, you're shaking your head, right? Yeah. Inquiry method, you just take it in. You just ask him a question and don't respond other than with loving eyes. The other one, very briefly, is a woman I worked with over time who had a very successful flower shop in Connecticut. She had to hire a designer. She had to hire other people. And she came to me because she was having power struggles with this woman. And she was feeling really defeated and stuck, and she didn't know what to do. Well, lo and behold, her life lesson. Your fingerprints have your life school, your life purpose. We talked about those two things for you. Yeah. And your life lesson, which is your least evolved skill, the thing you're not meant to be good at. And hers was about power errors on the right index finger, the pointer finger, right? Interesting. And she was having major power struggles and power errors. So we worked over time about what it would feel like physically to stand in her own power and to do it in an empowering way, rather than I'm mad at you or shrinking and giving away her power to this woman. So that's what we worked on over time, was about her relationship to power and influence. Life school is the foundation. Okay. Life purpose is your ultimate, from a soul perspective, how you want to live in every aspect of your life. Yours is about being in that spotlight and using your gift markings in your hands. Yeah. The life lesson is it's the shadow. It's your biggest challenge. Okay. And it actually is the doorway to your life purpose.
That is just so worth noting too, because I think so many people, that's the thing they're staying away from the most. And that's the thing that they need to pay the most attention. It's all important, but you know what I'm saying.
I find that I have more success and people get more value if they work with me over time. So if you live in another country, I'll show you how to get your fingerprints and your hands to me. If you live in this country or in Canada, I send a print kit to you, and it's actually ink print. If you obviously live near where I am, or when I travel, I go to Florida, so I'll be down there in February and March. I do traveling around parts of the country, so I'm available, but basically people would come to me and I'll print their hands there, and all of it's recorded.
Awesome. Hey, I think that's a lot of information for everybody.
Oh, and teaching too.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm having the level 1 class in Burlington, Vermont, live class. Okay. For people who are just starting out. It's very powerful. They can actually do readings after it, but it's also the prerequisite for our 3 levels of training beyond that. Yeah.
I will put up all your descriptions, your number, your contact information in this video. If I've forgotten anything before we go into our rapid fire, is there something that maybe you think I've missed? I want to make sure.
Well, I think there are 2 things that come to my mind. One is I am so grateful for what I do because I learned so much about myself and about life and about techniques from my clients. I mean, I have stolen so much from my clients. I mean, there's so much wisdom there,
rich,
but
yes.
I've learned over time is that I just back off a little bit or ask a question, and the richness of their own truth comes out, and I am grateful. So that's one thing.
Love that.
I think the other thing is that I just am so grateful because I'm free. I wasn't that I didn't like my profession, but I am completely free, and I have to face myself every day, which is all about growth, right?
Oh, I love that. Okay, I think we're ready. We're heading into our rapid fire. You can't think about these long. They're quick answers, you know. What is your favorite movie?
Well, I think Crash for a variety of reasons. Crash is my favorite movie. Yeah.
Okay, I love it.
I've got lots of favorites, but that's my favorite.
I love it. If you were going to change the world needs what in order to be changed?
I think children, education. I think that looking at the curriculum as developing them as human beings, not just the information they're learning. So I think teaching about empathy, teaching about kindness, teaching about service, what it truly means to serve, and to create little human beings from the get-go, from the start.
Everyone has pet peeves. What is your pet peeve?
But I think closed-mindedness, and that would be judgment, would be part of that, is being closed-minded and not at least being curious or being open to another person's way of being. So
we all have beautiful qualities about ourselves. What is something about yourself that you just love?
I am basically a fearless and very brave person. So I hope that I can be an emblem for other women, but anybody, but other women in terms of stepping into their own fearlessness and their own bravery.
What are you doing when you're experiencing joy?
The wintertime, which is very long here in Vermont, it's when I'm out cross-country skiing all by myself, and it's quiet and that pristine white, and you don't really hear much because there aren't a lot of birds even in the wintertime, and just the sound of my skis and the solitude.
Yeah. I love that. That is the best way to end this interview. Janet, thank you so much for your time. Times 3. We know what that means. I so appreciate you accepting the invitation and just sharing your light, your wisdom, and your modality. Handtails. www.handtails.com, right?
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Jeannie, for having me. It was wonderful to connect again.
Have a great day.
Yeah. Bye-bye.